Great. Thank you, Kaylin, and thank you all for joining. I'm just going to run through today some background on my work in Ukraine and how we have arrived at the position we have today over the last 3 months, and then provide an update on some of the ongoing efforts to support the Ukrainians in their fight for freedom and resisting the Russian invasion, and then take any questions that you might have. As many of you know, I sit on 2 of the primary committees of jurisdiction that oversee the lead up to the invasion, and then the efforts in the last 6 days since the invasion began, the House Armed Services Committee and the House Intelligence Committee. And starting late last year, in December timeframe, the United States started to receive intelligence about an imminent Russian invasion, and we believed at that time that likelihood was very high, that there would be a full assault. That started a process of declassifying information, and we really saw an unprecedented effort by the administration to declassify information, to make it publicly available to the media and to the public, but also to our allies and partners, to prepare them for the high likelihood that what is now happening would happen, to help bolster their defense, but also to kick off a diplomatic effort to consolidate the transatlantic alliance, our partnerships, and also to start pushing Russia both diplomatically and with military tools to try to prevent the invasion that we thought was likely from happening. As part of that effort, I started to engage late last year in efforts to ramp up both the quantity, the type, and the speed of defensive military assistance being provided to Ukraine. As part of that effort, I led a House Intelligence Committee congressional delegation, a bipartisan delegation in December to meet with high-ranking intelligence officials, government officials, special operations personnel, and others in Ukraine to determine the extent of the support needed, what was happening, and how we could do better to support them. In addition to that, I was a part of the McCain / Graham CODEL to the Munich Security Conference last week, where we met again with high-ranking Ukrainian officials and engaged in discussions with NATO alliance partners and others about how to push additional assistance. At that time, there was still a high degree of reluctance by many European nations and diplomats, including the Ukrainians, about the likelihood of an invasion. So we continued our U.S. diplomatic effort and government-to-government effort to try to push them in the direction of recognizing the severity of the threat. In the last 3 months, we have been able to help the administration vastly increase its defensive military assistance and the provision of supplies. At this point, we have approved, allocated, or delivered upwards of $1 billion of defensive munitions, equipment, and supplies to the Ukrainian military and to the Ukrainian government to assist them. And of course, much of that is still on the way as we speak right now. Since the invasion kicked off 6 days ago, what we have seen is an unprecedented response by the international community, both diplomatically. We've seen an isolation of Russia. We've seen a substantial pushback at the United Nations, through the European Union, through NATO and others, and really a move towards establishing Russia as a pariah state so long as they continue this unprecedented aggression and invasion in Europe. In addition to that, we've seen a lot of other things that, frankly, many people were not expecting, and that is a substantial sanctions response. Never before in history have we seen the quantity, the scope, and the type of sanctions that we're seeing levied by European countries, the international community against Russia. That it also includes non-official boycotts by private companies and others who are using their moral authority to push back on Russian aggression as well. We've also seen an unprecedented step up of military aid to Ukraine. That includes Germany, that has changed a long-standing policy of not providing lethal assistance, and they are now doing so to a very high degree, as well as other countries that are doing the same for the first time or increasing their spending. We have also seen a huge blowback from the NATO alliance. And I will just say 2 years ago, when I was at the Munich Security Conference, the theme of that conference was Westlessness. That was what the conference was called. And at that time, there was a sense that the West had lost its way, that people didn't know what the NATO alliance would do in the future, what its role was. Fast forward to today, and it's never been more clear, and that alliance has never been more unified about its purpose, about its moral thrust, and the resolve that it must show to stand against autocracy and assaults on democracy, both literal and figurative. And we've also seen, in addition to that, countries like Finland and Sweden start discussions and start pointing towards joining NATO. So, in fact, this illustrates a couple of things. Number one, Putin's miscalculation about the response. I think he miscalculated the ability of his military, the capability of his military to conduct a major ground invasion. And we've seen substantial setbacks, military setbacks by the Russians, which I can get into in detail. Number two, substantial miscalculation about the resistance of the Ukrainians and the level of ferocity and their will to fight, which has been unbelievable and substantial. Number three, he underestimated the international sanctions response. And very clearly, they've been set back and knocked back on their heels by the ferocity of that international response. And number four, I believe that it was his intent that tried to use this invasion to undermine and further drive a wedge in the NATO alliance. But in fact, the opposite has happened. It has coalesced support. It has increased military support for the alliance, and it has driven additional countries towards seeking or starting discussions about joining the alliance. Quick update on the invasion itself. As I indicated earlier, the Russians have encountered substantial setbacks. There have been a couple of surprises about the military operation. Number one, the challenges the Russians have encountered. Their logistics and supply chain issues have been substantial. It has become very clear that most of their military personnel, their fighting force, was actually not briefed on the fact that they were going to conduct an invasion. In fact, we're seeing reports that many of them thought that they were just being deployed as part of exercises. And it wasn't until they actually engaged in combat that they realized that was coming. That morale is extremely low as a result of that. And their assault has been very slow, and they failed to do many elementary things that a massive invasion would require, like establishing air superiority, establishing supply chains, and carrying forward momentum in the invasion, all of which continues to be slow and faltering. Number two, of course, is the surprise about the level of Ukrainian resistance and the ability of the Ukrainians to fight back and resist, both conventionally and unconventionally. Three is the proven combat leadership at this point of President Zelensky. I think everyone was very surprised about his response here and how he has risen to the occasion and proved himself to be maybe one of the most effective wartime leaders of the certainly the 21st century, but of several generations, and is doing an amazing job. So I will stop there and would love to take any questions that you all might have.
For those that have questions, please go ahead and unmute yourself, and you can ask your question one by one.
All right, Blair.
Hey, Congressman. I was just curious what your thoughts were about where things stand, what intel you could share from classified briefing about where this thing looks like it's going 6 days in for, say, the next week or the next few days, as far as what intelligence and everything else is assessing.
Sure. Well, I'm not going to share any intelligence, and I won't share any information that I received from a classified briefing. I can talk about publicly available information, and what we know and what has been determined at this point is despite the substantial setbacks, the Russians have allocated probably close to 80% of the amassed combat power. They amassed about 200,000 troops. That's about 110 what are called battalion tactical groups, BTGs, which is how the Russians organized their military units. About 80% of that has been allocated into battle. What appears to be the case is Putin and the Russian military leadership underestimated the extent of the Ukrainian response and resistance, and initially allocated much less of that combat power than they would have needed, failed to establish air superiority, and failed to conduct a lot of the other kind of preparatory battleground work that you would normally do in an invasion. Despite that, it does appear as though they are reinforcing their first echelon invasion forces, that they are allocating additional combat power, that they are taking some tactical and strategic pauses to re-equip, to fix their supply chain issues, and they are learning and they are adapting and regrouping to continue the push. And I think we have every reason to believe that Vladimir Putin will continue the aggressive push and actually ramp up the brutality of the invasion and resort to siege tactics and indiscriminate attacks on civilian population and violations of international law to achieve his ends. So the Ukrainian resistance remains fierce. We must get them more weapons and equipment and ammunition to resupply and re-equip them as they run low, just given the nature of this battle. But I think this will continue, and it's probably safe to say that elements of this will convert to a resistance movement in those areas that have been occupied and taken over by the Russians at this point. So I think you'll see conversion from conventional warfare to resistance warfare in those occupied areas, continued resistance on the conventional end from the military on military conflict between the Ukrainian conventional forces and the Russian conventional forces, but also a realignment of forces. One of the challenges that remain is that a substantial amount of the Ukrainian military remains in the east along what's called the line of contact in the Donbass. And one of the things we had been pushing the Ukrainians to do for several months is actually remobilize those forces and move them from the east to the west to create a defensive perimeter along Kyiv and Kharkiv and along the Dnieper River. They failed to do that, and they remain kind of a split force. So making sure that the Ukrainians have some ability to reconsolidate and move their forces to hold the capital and other major cities will remain very important in the days and weeks to come.
Thank you, Congressman.
Hey, Congressman, this is Kara Mason from the Sentinel.
Hey, Kara.
What would be your message to people, perhaps maybe even in your own party or the general public, that are a little skeptical of the sanctions and how they'll work?
Yeah, I think that skepticism is well-founded, actually. I think one of the several things that we know about Russia is that they are used to sanctions. They've been sanctioned for a long time, although to a much lesser degree. I think Vladimir Putin believes that he can weather the storm, so to speak, that he can evade those by working through China and Iran and other countries to try to continue a supply of oil outward and money inward. Vladimir Putin has been planning for this for a very long time. Let's not forget that what is happening right now has been in his mind for decades. This is the culmination of his life, work, and legacy in his own mind, and taking Ukraine and reestablishing the Soviet empire as he sees it is essential to his legacy. So he's been putting pieces in place to try to prepare for the response to that. And that includes setting up a huge rainy day fund and putting hundreds of billions of dollars into reserve to try to weather that storm. So they're right to be skeptical, and we have to make sure that we are not only doing the right sanctions, but doing them substantially, that we are sticking with them, that we can do it for a long period of time, because sanctions take months or even sometimes years to really take effect. So there's a longevity issue here. And then there's an enforcement issue. So it's one thing to levy a sanction. It's another thing to make sure that it's actually effective and you can enforce it and you can find the funds. And it's extremely difficult to find these funds because Vladimir Putin and his oligarchs and others are very, very good at hiding it. So this is going to be a long game, and there's going to be fits and starts in making it happen. But we have to make sure that we resource properly the Treasury Department, primarily in the United States, and our work with our allies to make it happen. And that's why one of the reasons why it's very important that we pass a supplemental funding bill for Ukraine, because a big part of that supplemental bill will be funding the Treasury Department Office of Foreign Assets Control that will be responsible for implementing and enforcing the sanctions.
Congressman.
Yeah, Kara, did that answer your question?
Yeah, I was just going to say thank you so much.
Yeah, okay, all right, yep.
John Aguilar, Denver Post. Thank you.
Hey, John.
There's been some talk about, enforcing a no-fly zone potentially. Others think that's a very dangerous strategy given Russia with 5,000 nuclear warheads in its arsenal, plus What's your thoughts on the talk about that and the possibility of any kind of escalation, given what Putin has said about his arsenal?
Yeah, my thought is very clear. We do not have the capability, nor should we attempt to set up a no-fly zone. And those that are talking about that, I don't think fully understand what that means and how you do that. What that means is it's sending United States and NATO aircraft over Ukraine to fight and shoot down Russian aircraft. That would immediately put us into a wartime footing with Russia, and we would be in a position of the two largest nuclear powers being in an all-out war in Europe. That is not a tenable situation. It's incredibly escalatory and extremely dangerous. So I don't believe we should do that. What I do believe we should do is start discussions and figure out how we can establish some type of humanitarian corridor for the flow of refugees and civilians and humanitarian aid in and out of the major cities as the humanitarian crisis continues to unfold and escalate, because as the Russians resort to these siege type of tactics, obviously the costs on the civilian population will only increase fairly precipitously at this point.
Thank you, sir.
Thank you. One other thing, John, I'll mention is the European Union has indicated that they would be willing to provide fighter aircraft to the Ukrainians, MiG-29s primarily, but that remains in flux. So one of the best things we can do, if we're not able to implement a no-fly zone, which I don't think we are able to nor should for the reasons I just described, is re-equip and plus up the Ukrainian Air Force with the ability to keep the skies contested. So today, as of today, the Russians still do not have air superiority, that the air over Ukraine remains contested. And I think it's in the Ukrainians' interest and everyone's interest that we actually maintain that to the extent possible. But the capability of the Ukrainians to maintain that is rapidly degrading. So getting them additional MiGs in supplies, fuels, and logistic to support those air operations and to continue to attack the Russian columns is going to be incredibly important. But time is of the essence here. We're running very short on time.
That actually triggered a question, what you just said there, if you don't mind indulging me for one more. Is there any sense of how much degradation we've seen of the Ukrainian military at this point? I know we're less than a week into this, and Putin's ramping things up now, but is there any sense of just how viable their military still is against the much larger Russian opposition?
Yeah, I cannot answer that question. I won't go into forced posture or information of that nature.
Understood. Thank you.
Thanks. Blair.
I don't know if you could talk about it, but if you can't, I also wanted to ask about basically what are the supply lines like into Ukraine right now? And if we can't talk military aspect of that, can we talk humanitarian aspect of it? Because obviously there's the refugee aspect, but there's also supplies for civilians who are still inside Ukraine. I'm wondering if there's anything you could share on that.
Yeah, I won't go into the military supply lanes. That's obviously sensitive, and we don't want to jeopardize the Ukrainians' ability to receive those materials. But I will say, from a humanitarian perspective, the outflow of refugees is substantial and only getting much larger, and it remains challenging for folks moving west and south into Poland primarily, but also Romania, to use the roadways and to get out. Although I will say that Poland and others in Europe have done amazing work by accepting the refugees, waiving certain refugee and transit requirements, and welcoming them over the border. But I think we're going to see, the estimates are we've seen anywhere from 500 to 700,000 Ukrainians leave Ukraine in the past 6 days. I think that number is going to balloon to several times that in the weeks ahead.